Hi guys, Mark here. Just wanted to today talk about cutting sheet metal by hand with tin snips and mechanically using a electric shear and an old style metal cutting machine which is called a throatless shear. But just at the moment, first thing we'll do is introduce a couple of pairs of different types of tin snips. These are old school, still very good, usable. If you've got a pair of these, good on you. I tend to use the aero type, the aircraft snips. These are very good for cutting thicker grades of metal. You know, you can sort of cut stainless steel and everything with these. They do have a spring return on them, and in that regard, what that does is just allows your hand a little bit of breathing space sometimes because it springs back for you. There's just different brand ones you can get. These particular ones, still the same, very good. So what we're talking about is these are left and right hand tin snips. Now what they have is they have a little bit of a kick one way or the other, and the blades are actually opposites to each other. Now the idea of that is two ideas that I see is you can use one pair of tin snips on either side of your bit of sheet metal. You can use it the correct way, up one way, or if you want to reverse it, you can turn it upside down and actually cut it, but the sheet metal, instead of rolling upwards like it would if you're doing it normally, it actually rolls downwards, which I find very handy sometimes when you can't see the line and you want to follow a line very finely. The metal doesn't actually curl up and get in your road. So why I sort of explain that that's sort of two ways of using it. It's a little bit confusing, but once you get used to it, you'll find that you can do nice cuts with your snips and not have any sort of big gouges or anything. The idea with tin snips is to just try and keep the hand movements moving evenly. Otherwise you try and jiggle it up and down, you end up with chunks in your sheet metal and you don't want that. So okay, the idea of left and rights as well is if you have a big length of sheet metal. Let's imagine now, I'm going to do a little bit of a project here. Just going to imagine that we're cutting up through a big length of sheet metal. Instead of cutting this and lifting that piece all the way up, what you're doing is I want you to get your piece of sheet metal. You start to cut this way and that rolls up this piece on the left hand side. Then you swap snips and you start going on that piece and that starts to roll it up. And you go again, and what that does, it just continues rolling that piece of sheet metal up without you having to lift up the whole big piece of sheet metal to cut all the way through it. So that's just an example of how you can cut through a whole piece of a sheet without having to keep on lifting up the other piece and wasting it and working with it like that. So you work with both pairs, you've got your lefts and your rights. Okay? As I say, you tend to roll your metal up one side, but you roll this is normally, these are your left ones, which normally you would cut, this would be your left side and it lifts a piece of sheet metal up top, or if you flip them upside down, you can do it from your right side as well, but it rolls the sheet metal, the off-cut, to the underneath side of your job. Okay, it's pretty good because you can, as I say, follow your lines as you're doing it. Okay, so that's a quick explanation on the tin snips. Now what I'm going to do is just explain the same deal. What I have here, this is a electric shear, which is just an old school bit of gear which you can still buy these days. You can buy modern versions of them. I've mounted it onto a steel mount which I can put into the vise, and when I turn it on, I basically use it sort of like a bandsaw type thing, or just a continuous cut. So you draw a line, you draw something on your bit of sheet metal, and I'm going to make a little bit of noise here now. Put my eyes on. I'll turn this on. Okay, quick and simple, use a little bit of power, no big deal. Going back in the years before all those sort of things were sort of invented, the early days what they used to do was they used to use these things over here. This is called a throatless shear. And now the idea of a throatless shear is basically like a rotary pair of tin snips, and you would just start rolling the handle like that, and you can cut out any shape you want to roll around. And then the offcut just bounces, just cuts off on the underside, and that's what you get. So again, beautiful way to do it, but if you don't have this sort of old school equipment, tin snips is a beautiful way of doing it. But if you're into sort of working, trying to make a dolly, you've got to make things happen as fast as possible, and that's what you want. But yeah, the tin snips, definitely the go. If you've got a good old pair of Gilbos, good on you, or if you've got those aero snips, definitely worth getting. Pay a little bit more, but very much worth getting. Alright? Okay, and just another tip that I want to tell you about is when you're using a guillotine, sometimes you don't know where the lines are. If you scribe a line, you can't always see where it is. So let's have this imaginary scribe line, which is a texture mark. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the snips, and on the left hand side, on the left hand side where the guillotine would be, I'm going to use those snips to drop a little bit down. So the idea is once you drop it down, that little part catches in the back of the blade. So that's what you do there. So that drops that blade down, so that when you want to lock it in, we can go and we'll have a look on the guillotine, and I'll show you what I mean, and then we can lock that into position, and then we can cut it. This is talking in overall in a length of sheet metal. Alright? Okay, so now we've cut our nicks, and the idea is to drop it down at the back, so that when we slide this into the guillotine, you pull it forward and it grabs on those nicks. So those nicks are actually holding, and it can't move when you jump on the guillotine, so that it doesn't fall one way or the other. So if you've got a big long bit of sheet metal and you're at an angle and you don't know where it's sitting because it's not going to be square up against the butt of the guillotine, you want to be able to know where the cut is and starts and finishes. So in that case, we've got it now, we're locked into position, so we just get on it and jump on it. Alright, so that's it. Well, that's about it as far as the sheet metal cutting goes in that regard. So if there's something that I can help you with in the future, if you want, just drop us a line, drop us an email, or maybe go on Facebook. Hopefully I can help you out, and good luck. Thanks. Bye.